Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Vlad again from WritingLeagues.com, and I'm here to hopefully drop some knowledge on an open mic piece. This one being from Vammy, and this one is called Alexander the Great. From origins of the Apple of Discord, Zeus and his lords, to the east known as a civilized horde, truce is broken and peace dethroned, Greece must go to war. Vengeance awakened, and they're feasting on some thrones, they turn royalty into the poor. The census is at their vagrants, invaders and warmongers. Alexander attack conquer, another rogue wanders, and asks Xerxes who's stronger. So many troops swore that they were conjured by Athena or Ares trying to make a monster. Swooped and went bonkers in Anatolia, it was a quick slaughter. Liberated Egypt, now the slain men martyrs. Victory is the only option, they refuse to barter. Recruit from Amarna, and then march into Persia. In the second, peasants turn to soldiers, wielding courage in small boulders. Greece pulls out the shields and the phalanx formation, and it's over. Syria, fools gonna be rebuilding to the next year. Captured so fast, Alexander not even a year older. Through Macedonia, Thrace, they are brothers standing shoulder to shoulder, barely speaking in a calm rage. Step to close their spears and end up with sharpened stone in your rib cage. Conquest of the empire, on to the next page. Beasts taller than giants, shattering the morale of those who wish to engage. Greek alliance, battering the foul foes who insist in using elephants instead of battling him on the main stage, leaving India enraged. Last, the end of the world, and then we usher in a golden age. Instead his troops fade, mutiny they say. Hades to they pray, exclaim their friends and families, haven't seen them in over 1,000 days. India, the end of the world, and Poseidon knows we wish to see beyond the fray, but our troops are in dismay, and their mental states left in decay. If you refuse to flee from Bombay, we shall face you in melee, and your loyalist is who we slay. His great army dare to betray? Sadly, even the greatest warrior alone can't keep the beasts away. Alexander returned to West after his overstay, elects his best to rule in his place when he rules in Greece. Within a year the young man is fallen and meek, and has lost all of his arrogance. Even the greatest warrior cannot fight the blade of pestilence. That was a mouthful, my dude. That was a bit of a mouthful. Alright, I'll break this one down a little bit further than the last few that I've done. So I thought it was a good start. I mean, I'm not overly versed in this ancient stuff. And I don't really plan to be. So I'm going to take your word for the events and how they unfolded, and sort of do a bit more of the story as a whole and the technical aspect. So again, I think you had a good start here with the Apple of Discord, Zeus and his lords, to the east known as a civilized horde. I thought you set that up quite nice for an opening line here. Greece going to war, vengeance awakened, which is, here's where I took some issue with some of the wording, is at times you had very pronounced wording. It was very well written from the narrative, sort of the third person, and it was pretty, I don't know if I'd say advanced in that sense. But compared to some of it, there were times that I didn't think were quite up to par with the rest of the consistency. Vengeance awakened, and they're feasting on some thrones. I know there's a way that you could have worded that, so it wasn't just feasting on some thrones. It seems sort of distant from what you're telling just in that wording. Specifically some thrones. I mean, if you had gone into a bit more detail, more descriptive, you know, even describing the throne, what throne, you know, that sort of thing. Let's keep going. Alexander attack conquer. I think you probably needed to make one of those plural. Alexander's attacks conquer. Just a minor hiccup that sort of makes the reader reread that, which can lose a pace. Another rouge wanders should be rogue, just a flipping of the words, not a huge issue. Again, the same thing. So many troops swear they were conjured by Athena or Ares trying to make a monster. That was nice. Swooped and went bonkers in Anatolia. I mean, what you're kind of doing here is you're telling about an ancient story, but you're using, I don't know if I'd say cheap, but I'm gonna use it in this sense, slightly cheap wording that wouldn't have been used in that period or even now to describe it. I think that could have been switched a little bit. And again, the swooped and went bonkers in Anatolia, it was a quick slaughter. I mean, there's definitely, you could have even had an extra line or two describing that slaughter, which would have brought a lot more imagery, a lot more easy to envision what's being said. Let's keep going. I did like this line. In a second, peasants turned to soldiers, wielding courage and small boulders. I think you needed an I in wielding, so it's actually wielding, not welding. Again, another minor issue, just pointing it out because I'm kind of OCD. Also, I mean, in terms of if this was for some sort of competition, I mean, you may get docked for sort of things like that. Even in just normal English. If you were doing this for like an assignment or a paper, that's just little things that could be pointed out. Let's see. Again here, Syria, fool's gonna be rebuilding till the next year. I thought that was just kind of a cheap way of wording this. Is kind of going back to like a basic sense of writing, which, I mean, it wouldn't have been bad if the whole piece was written that way, but because I'm holding most of this piece like 80% to a higher standard, because of the consistency again, I think that could have been worded, described differently. I think that's also a place in the story in terms of the technical aspect that the lines did start to get a bit longer. And I know you did have some inner rhymes going on, which was a nice add-in. And this line's actually not, these ones aren't so bad here, but a bit closer to the end, they definitely need to be split up, so that it was a bit cleaner of a read. A line shouldn't be so long that you need to stop and take a breath or swallow in between and you haven't finished the line yet. So yeah, formatting would be that. I know this is a bit of an old piece, so I apologize for getting to it late. I do think that you have improved quite drastically in your recent stuff, so maybe maybe I've already said it, or maybe someone else has said it, and you've taken the advice and fixed some of the format. I think I did see at least one where it was, but I figured I'd mention that again. Let's keep going here. Step to close their spears and end up with sharpened stone in your rib cage. Kind of broke perspective a little bit, I think, there. With putting in your rib cage. Even when I was reading it, I kind of chuckled slightly. It seemed more like you were trying to diss somebody or throwing that isn't as a punchline. Which, again, that's fine, but the rest of the feel of the piece is not that. So that was another slight consistency issue there. Let's keep going. I like this line, beasts taller than giants, shattering the morale of those who wish to engage. That was nice. Yeah, keep going here. This line here, instead his troops fade, mutiny, they say. That could have been its own line. Hades, to they pray. A slight wording issue. Hades do they pray, exclaim their friends and families, haven't seen them in over 1,000 days. I mean, the whole as a line, you had 3 rhymes in that line. I think it probably could have been split up into 3 lines even, with just the end rhyme would have probably been sufficient. The next line as well, India, the end of the world, and Poseidon knows we wish to see beyond the fray, but our troops are in dismay and their mental states. Again, 3 rhymes in that. It's a mouthful, and I think it could have been split up, especially with the next line starting, left in decay, if you refuse to flee from Bombay. And then you actually capitalized, we shall face you in melee, or at least capitalized the we. The W, whatever. So that definitely needed to have just been hitting the enter key. That's all that is. Not a huge issue. Just would have made it a bit cleaner, easier to read. And I did like how you wrapped this up with Alexander returning to the West, stating that he overstayed. It is a good setup for the end. Alexis best to rule in his place when he returns, when he rules in Greece. Within a year, the young man has fallen in meek. So there's the falling at the end there. And then the last bar, last 2 lines, I think you needed a more pronounced end rhyme. Because obviously being the last line, it's the last thing people read, the last thing people will remember. And we had the scheme of, and has lost all of his arrogance, cannot fight the blade of pestilence. So we have the hard A in arrogance, and we have the E in pestilence. I mean, you could maybe make it work a bit more than I did. But I think in general that it is a bit off, not as consistent as some of the other stuff. So that's the standouts for me, in terms of strengths and what could have been changed about this piece. Overall, I do think this was a well-written piece. I liked it. It was in its way informative. If somebody was into that, I could definitely see them sort of immersing themselves in that, sort of gaining that bit of knowledge of the events. I mean, again, the title being and the piece being about Alexander the Great. If someone was intrigued or interested by this piece, I mean, it's not hard to say that they might go and Google Alexander the Great, and spend another like 10 or 15 minutes reading into it if somebody had that interest. So it was nice in that regard as well. It was engaging. You didn't really try to overdo anything. Again, I think there was some things that were underdid, if that's a word, because I'm putting it together as a word. But it was, I mean, like, again, 80% of it was extremely consistent, and well written. And then there was just those little things that would add up to that last 20% that would bring this piece around to be a great piece. And I mean, it still was a great piece. Just fixing those little things would step it up even further, if you know what I am saying. So that would be that. I know, again, this is an older piece, so might not be the greatest feedback, or timing even to give the feedback if you've sort of moved on from it. But it has been sitting here a little bit, so I figured I would get to it, get some feedback into it, and even if you've moved past the sort of format and style of this, I hope you can still take something from what I've said and use that in the future. And that'll be all from me. Again, this was Alexander the Great by Vammy and the open mic on writingleagues.com, and have a good one.